in finance and master's degree in English. She has taught as an instructor at CalPoly, Pomona, and teaches currently at Cuesta College. She is a certified practitioner in biofield tuning. Is that right? Really? Okay. And master's certificate in health and wellness coach. Let me introduce you to Allie Bowen.
I want to thank you all for being here. I know you've been standing for a while. I do have some really important information to share with you, and also an important message. I wanted to say we welcome everyone. You know, libertarians, Democrats, Republicans, independents, and anyone sitting on the fence. I was a lifelong Democrat until 3 years ago, when I switched my party to independent because I could see there was so much division between the parties that important conversations weren't being had. And I'm seeing this division again. Many things regarding this pandemic has pitted us against each other. Democrats against Republicans, Republicans against Democrats, neighbor against neighbor, friends against friends. This is not a thing to be proud of. This is a worrisome thing. This is a dangerous thing, and here's why. Because when the people start fighting with one another and are divided, it distracts us, and it's easier for corrupt leaders to gain more power and more control before the people realize what's happening. And this is what has occurred in our country for the past 20 to 30 years in particular. And that is why we are in the situation that we find ourselves in today. We have been so distracted with labels, with who is on whose team, and we have allowed corruption to run rampant in our state government and in our federal government. I don't care if you're Democrat or Republican, both sides have corruption. All you have to do is follow the money on opensecrets.org, which is a premier research group tracking money in politics and its effects on elections and public policies. We've become too complacent in letting others think for us and make up our minds instead of researching and using our own beautiful minds and our own beautiful intuition. We've turned our responsibility to get involved in our government over to career politicians who are bombarded by lobby groups and special interest groups that are willing to dole out big money for their agendas. We've selected people just because they are part of and wear the label we've decided to give blanket approval to, rather than asking ourselves, what are the agendas of a particular issue that a leader is representing? Once we understand that we tend to do this as human beings, it is far easier to see what agendas exist and then decide what agenda you agree with. If there are two parties involved, then there are two agendas. The issue we face currently has two agendas because of the two parties vying for position on the issue. When there are agendas, you have to strip each of its label. Sorry, the wind is kind of conservative, liberal, Democrat, Republican, all has to go. You have to strip it away. When we do that, but when we do that, it allows us to begin to see more objectively what the agenda is. So when the pandemic hit, I began listening to what was being said by both sides, and then I stripped them of labels to break down and discover what each was. One agenda is about reopening our country, restoring our jobs, restoring our constitutional rights, and saving lives from financial ruin. The other agenda is about continuing to shelter at home, receiving government handouts, tanking the economy, financially ruining the lives of many people, stripping Americans of constitutional rights, and requiring mandated vaccines. Then you have to ask yourself, which one resonates with you? Once you know, then that is the agenda you support, and go support it. There may be times that when you do this, you may side with the Republicans. There may be times when you do this, you may side with the Democrats or independents or libertarians. But until you strip away labels, you'll always be making a decision on biases of whatever party you belong, and will continue to effectively hand over your decision making to someone who might not have your best interests at heart on that respective issue. You may not always like the person who is standing up for the agenda you agree with most, but do not let that stop you from following your deepest internal compass, especially when it deals with such fundamental issues as your constitutional rights. No party is worth destroying our constitutional rights. If your friends or family are having difficulty seeing the two agendas and are just sticking to their party line, maybe write down for them on a paper what the two are without labels and ask them which one would they choose and why. And then you share which one you would choose and why. And then it becomes a discussion rather than a fight. It becomes a chance to really hear one another, which we need to become better about in our country if we're going to stand together, united, and save our country. For myself, I have chosen the first agenda because it resonates what I know is true for myself and my beliefs. I believe in freedom. I believe in my right to work. My moral compass tells me it's the right thing to help save lives from much more consequential losses that would come from financial ruin of our economy. And I know that the majority, if not all of us here today, have chosen the first agenda for many of the same reasons. Is that right? The second agenda really scares me because there's an erosion of constitutional rights embedded in it. Sheltering healthy people at home, mandating vaccines, not letting those who want to work go to work. All of these are in violation of our constitutional rights. Telling people to govern their neighbor, forcing people to receive government handouts to survive, telling people who can work and who can't, forcing vaccines on the masses. All of those things are communist philosophies, not democratic philosophies. And it doesn't matter who the leader or party is. It doesn't change the facts what these things fundamentally are. We the people, however, are in a very precarious position because we are in a state where the policies are operating under the second agenda. In case any of you aren't aware, our County Board of Supervisors sent our county plan to Newsom and requested reopening our county 4 different times. Each time, Newsom would change the goalpost. Our Board of Supervisors would then meet that new goal and send it back to him, only to see him change that goalpost again each time. So it doesn't make sense to keep petitioning someone who does that. It's a waste of time, which is why we are doing civil disobedience and as carefully and safely as possible reopening our businesses. The board dropped its plan as a result of Newsom's obstinance, but the board is now not in alignment with what we the people need. We need to focus our attention immediately on 2 things. One, we need to get federal intervention into our state, because according to Harmeet Dillon of the Center of American Liberty, who is handling most of those court cases against Newsom, she said we're not getting justice in the courts. The judges here are giving Newsom carte blanche, and that Newsom is quickly, and here's the scary point, he is quickly trying to make his unconstitutional policies into law. And second, we need to become aware of the corruption in our political system and do something about it. We ask all of you today to sign the petition that we have going around that will be sent to the U.S. Attorney General and to Newsom's office. We also ask that you contact the County Board of Supervisors and demand that they send a letter to the U.S. Attorney General asking for federal intervention. We ask that you begin a massive, unceasing email and phone campaign stating the constitutional rights that are being stripped in California and sending it to the U.S. Attorney General at the Department of Justice website and doing a phone call too. And doing the same, to Matthew the U.S. Attorney General of the Eastern District in Michigan, who has been commissioned by the U.S. Attorney General to be on the lookout for violations of people's constitutional rights. Please also contact the FBI via a letter. They actually are very interested in finding out that this is going on. Well, I think they do. Well, I would hope they do, but here's the thing. Unless we start telling them and saying that we are not happy with this, who knows if they're going to get involved or not.
I'll write Christopher Ray today.
Awesome, thank you. Thank you. I have been doing these things myself for a while now, but we all need to do so they get the message that we really need federal help in California. Because even if Newsom allowed our county to open, which he's not going to do, I don't believe he's going to do it, we'd still be under his domain, which is why we need federal help, because this problem is too big for us and too big for our county. The second thing that we're asking is for you to be aware of the corruption and your rights by joining lawfulamerica.com. which is a grassroots movement taking place to educate Americans on our constitutional rights and to get us working together to help end corruption and ensure mandated vaccines never happen. When I was young, I remember my teacher showing us videos of Nazi Germany, and they were asking just ordinary German citizens why they didn't stop Hitler before Hitler got into massive power. And they said that they thought others would do it. And then they said when they realized that it was time to stand up, it was too late. Let's not let it be too late.
That's right.
For any of you who wonder why this is crucial, I want to share the research I've done through primary sources that show the corruption due to pharmaceutical lobbyists, and that vaccines have been on the agenda of both Republicans and Democrats who've been accepting this lobbyist money for a long time. It's first important to understand that every drug in our country goes through a rigorous testing process through the FDA. However, did you know that vaccines do not get any testing? Zero testing. This is what makes them such easy money. In 1962, children were required to get 3 vaccines. In 1983, children were required to get 24 vaccines. In 1986, Congress passed a law, H.R. 5546, called National Vaccine Injury Act, that effectively erases any pharmaceutical's liability on a vaccine. You cannot take a pharmaceutical company to court if you ever have an injury from a vaccine because of that bill. In 2015, Jerry Brown passed SB 277, which effectively eliminates any Californian's right to exempt themselves from mandatory vaccines for personal beliefs. By 2016, children were required to get 72 vaccines after that bill. By 2016, Google and GlaxoSmithKline, the largest pharmaceutical company in Britain, created a new company to fight diseases using bioelectronics. Now, bioelectronics helps to monitor and change the systems of the body. GlaxoSmithKline made $1 billion on vaccines in this first quarter of 2020. In this first quarter, $1 billion. In 2017, representatives from California, Democrat Adam Schiff, Charlie Dent, Republican from Pennsylvania, Thomas Marino, Republican from Pennsylvania, and Peter Welch, Democrat from Vermont, introduced a bipartisan resolution called Vaccine Saves Lives Resolution. It's House Resolution 327. More than 90 members of Congress, both Democrats and Republicans, signed on to the resolution. The resolution, quote, affirms that vaccines and immunizations save lives and are essential to maintain the public health, economic, and national security of the people of the United States, unquote. Now, if that doesn't scare you, I don't know what does. In 2018, Newsom was able to raise $50 million alone for his race for the governorship in California. In comparison, his opponent, John Cox, was only able to raise $16.5 million. How did Newsom raise that much more money? Well, let's see what he's been focused on. In September 2019, Newsom signed another law, SB 714, that allows California government to reject certain medical exemptions for vaccines, making the immunization law passed by former Governor Jerry Brown in 2015 even more strict. According to the media, now this is according to the media, California now has one of the strictest laws in the nation regarding immunization. In January 2020, Newsom proposed that California will manufacture and carry its own generic drug label on pharmaceutical drugs. He claims it's to reduce prices on prescription medication. We believe this combined with his other actions, there's a deeper, less altruistic reason for his proposal. In OpenSecrets.org, the platform that gives and reveals political contributions, I found that the pharmaceutical industry contributes anywhere from $30 to $50 million each year to Republicans and Democrats. The common salary of a congressperson is $174,000 per year. OpenSecret.org shows the earnings of many of our politicians on the website and states that many of them don't enter Congress wealthy, but they leave wealthy. Let me share a few of the net worth of some of our representatives, both Republican and Democrat. $218 million net worth, $189 million, $118 million, $89 million, and so forth. We need to start asking ourselves, how the hell are they making this kind of money? In February 2019, our California Democrat Representative Adam Schiff, that politician, one of them who introduced Vaccine Saves Lives, was also the lawmaker who sent to the CEOs of Google and Facebook an unprecedented letter, meaning Congress is not really authorized to send letters to businesses asking them to conduct their business in certain ways. But he told them he was writing to, quote, express concerns that the company's platforms, including YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram, are surfacing and recommending information that discourages parents from vaccinating their children, unquote. And he asked the companies to let him know what they were doing to prevent that. In April 2020, during the COVID crisis, this same Democratic representative, Adam, there you go, again, sent letters to Google, Twitter, and YouTube and asked for basically what amounted to censorship. He said, quote, though the best protection is removing or downgrading harmful content before users engage with it, that's not always possible. Facebook recently plans to display messages to any users who have engaged in harmful coronavirus-related misinformation that has since been removed from the platform and connect them with resources from the World Health Organization. I urge you to adopt a similar practice for your users and others who engage with harmful information on your platform, unquote. If you post any anti-vaccine information or anything on vitamin C or vitamin D on Facebook or popular social media sites, it is immediately removed. In April 2020, one of Newsom's 6 goals before he allows California to reopen, and this is why I know he's not going to allow us to reopen California, is he said, quote, the ability to develop therapeutic drugs to meet the demand, unquote. Then he said, quote, this includes both Californian and national labs advancing research on a way to a vaccine. Newsom said that the hope is that a vaccine will be developed within the next year. He asked, quote, have we built a coalition of private, public, and academic partners to accelerate the development of therapeutics, unquote. Abraham Lincoln stated in the Gettysburg Address in 1863, quote, the government of the people, by the people, and for the people shall not perish from the earth, unquote. It's time for us, the people, to remind politicians who were voted into office that they are not running the show. We, the people, are. And I think it's time we really start pushing term limits for our representatives. No more career politicians means no more lobbyists who can corrupt them. It is my hope that as most of us have been in the same storm as one another and stripped of our many things and rights and had to rely on just the basics, that we will now make a commitment to each other of our hearts and in our hearts to permanently strip the labels that have long divided us. We are the United States of America. It's my hope that we will see ourselves as Americans first, not Democrats, not Republicans, not libertarians, not independents. We are Americans first. It's time we start to listen and hear one another out as Americans, as communities, as neighbors, and get involved in our government, that we may begin in our country to come up with the best solutions to our problems together. As we have found in this storm, we are stronger together than we are on our own. May each of us let our light shine, and may we have the same respect to one another. I love our country. I love our county. I love our communities. Thank you for being here. God bless America. And also, I wanted to tell you that the telephone numbers, the email addresses, all of that will be put up on Reopen San Luis County, so that you can get it for all those things that I talked about, and lawfulamerica.com for you to join. And also, if you ever want a copy of my speeches for the background information, I always put the primary sources in there. So just give me your email. I'm always happy to send it to anyone. Thank you so much for being here. Take care.
Thank you, Allie. Wasn't she great?